Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Loving God, Loving Me series. It's Mama C here. As always, I am so excited to be with you all. And today I've got some special guests. But before I introduce the special guest, I want to talk a little bit about the Loving God, Loving Me series. Now, this all started at the beginning of the year where I was like, oh, I don't know what I need to discuss in terms of like more than rubies. We've spoken about sex and purity. We've spoken about we've done cooking lessons. We've spoken about our credit scores. We've spoken about keeping ourselves with makeup and all of that kind of stuff. But this time I really wanted to get into something a little bit more serious. Spiritual growth and spiritual health is so important. But something I noticed, even throughout, the beginning of the pandemic, is how kind of Christians don't really care about, like, not that we don't care, but we're not so focused on the medical side of things and like the scientific side of things, because it kind of makes us feel as though if we put our trust in doctors, then we're not Christian. Like, we don't have enough faith. And so this is why this was very important to me. But I want to say hi to everyone again, because I think everyone is now coming in. So I'm going to say hi to everyone again. If you can, for me, kindly just share on your social media platforms that we are live. We are live on More Than Rubies, Loving God, Loving Me, the health series, episode 1 of the health series, episode 2 of Loving God, Loving Me. And today I have my special guests with me. I told you guys on Instagram that I was going to make sure I get experts, because I'm not an expert when it comes to these things. But I think it's important that if I can host experts, and I will, because it's important that you guys, talk to everybody too, because we don't just want to see you in the hospitals. We don't just want to see you when you're in like your professional places, but we also want to be able to gain from you, and for you to share your story, share wisdom, let us know things that we didn't know before, for us to actually gain more insight on our bodies. And it's really important to me, and I hope you guys gain lots and lots from today's event. If you don't know who I am and you joined because of a friend, say hi in the comments. We just want to say hi. I want to see everybody say hi. Hey, how are you all doing? How is everybody doing? So we've got the Life of T. Hey, how are you doing, K Royal? How are you doing? Hope you are doing very well today. So I have with me Juanita Coombs. Am I saying that correctly, please?
Yeah, it's actually just short for Ajikum, but yeah, Coombs is fine.
Hi, amazing. Amazing. I've got Juanita. Juanita is somebody I actually met on Instagram. I think it was during the time that I was talking about hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism, and basically it was where I was discussing if people actually know about their thyroid function, if people know, people have had enough tests done and this and that, and she actually reached out, and I was like, I want to know more about your story. And after she shared her story with me, I was literally like, I'm hoping you don't mind wanting to share your story on this platform, because I think it's important that other people do hear what you have to say. So without further ado, everybody, welcome Juanita. I want you to introduce yourself to everybody. So over to you.
So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. God bless you. So my name is Juanita, or on Instagram, Wani Coombs. So I am a nurse by profession. I've been a nurse for about probably over 9 years. And my background is emergency medicine, medical, general medicine, and also endocrinology, which is to do with hormones. So to talk about like thyroid, diabetes. So that's my background. And yeah, I'm here to also like share my experiences as well as having the condition as well. So yeah, hi everyone.
Thank you so much. Now, my first question to you, Anita, is how did you go about finding out about the diagnosis? How did all of that come about?
So it first started like with headaches. I had headaches literally in the, like, as we like medical people like to call it, frontal headache. So there was like, I had a lot of pressure in between my eyes, and I went to the opticians and I basically explained my symptoms, because I wear glasses as well. So they looked at the back of my eyes and they found a benign tumor which was putting pressure on my optic nerve, and that tumor was basically surrounding my pituitary gland, and that gland helps to produce a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. And so they referred me to the doctors, and then I got tested and they found out that I had a thyroid problem. And but they found out that that wasn't the actual cause of it. The actual cause was my actual thyroid gland. So just a bit of background, just to explain that the pituitary gland in your head, which kind of sits kind of here, produces a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone, and it stimulates the thyroid gland to produce more T3 and T4, which are to do with your thyroid. And they kind of help with metabolism, they help with your bowels, they help you stop feeling sluggish. They also help with fertility as well. They play a massive part with fertility. So that's how I basically found out. And when I was younger, I didn't really take it seriously until as I got of age and I got married. That's when I really kind of took that condition quite seriously. So yeah.
Wow. So was it just the headache? Was it just the headaches that made you?
It was like the headaches, and then also I was always tired. I was always moody, and I was often misdiagnosed as maybe having anxiety, having depression, because the condition actually kind of mimics that a little bit slightly, because you get mood swings because your hormones are just so imbalanced. Because I would say the thyroid gland is like a master hormone for the rest. So if that kind of, if that is kind of irregular, then the rest of them is also kind of falls out of place. So I was having a lot of depression, mood swings. I struggled to get out of bed in the morning. That was one of the things. And when I was much younger, I was quite an active person, and this wasn't like me. So people, they kind of, fed me with like drugs and said, yeah, it's just depression. And I was like, no, there's something more. So it was actually through the headaches when I went to the opticians, and that's how they found out. So I believe in a weird way, that was kind of God trying to get, because I kept getting fobbed off by the GP. It was like, no, it's depression, just take this tablet. And I was like, I know I am not depressed. I'm such a jovial person.
Yeah.
So going to the opticians was like the big step forward, and that's how they found everything out. Otherwise I would still be in that vicious circle, over and over again. Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting that you say that you went to the GP and you just kept being told to, this is what it is. Here's your prescription. Deal with it. That's what it is. But it wasn't until something else popped up that made them do a further investigation to find out that, hey, this is actually the cause. Now, to somebody out there that is like, okay, I've been going to the doctors and I know something's wrong, but these doctors keep telling me that, this is what it is. But you're like, something within you's like, this isn't really it, because what you're giving me isn't really treating what I have.
Yeah.
What would you say that person should, I mean, in your case, something else brought out the investigation to find out what was actually wrong. But to somebody who probably hasn't, something else hasn't, popped up for them to go back and find out if something else is wrong, what would you say to them?
I would say, because I think doctors are so used to patients coming in with, playing doctor from Dr. Google, like searching on the phone. And a lot of patients, they tend to kind of feel like, oh, they'll look on Google and say, okay, tiredness. And then they'll see like multiple conditions come up and then say that's what it is. So it kind of
I'm guilty.
makes doctors So it makes doctors kind of think, okay, is this person like, what exactly is the symptoms? I feel like when you go, what you need to do is list your symptoms down, write them down. So what am I experiencing? Am I getting headaches? Am Am I putting on weight unexplainably? What am I going through? List them down, and how often that you're having them, so that when you go to the doctor, it's easier for the doctor to diagnose. Because what happens is when we go to the doctor, we kind of do this thing where we do a storytelling, and it doesn't help the situation, it doesn't help the doctor. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sophie. It doesn't help
very right.
Yeah.
100% correct.
Yeah. It doesn't kind of help the doctor to kind of like decipher what's wrong. So automatically they already put you in a category because you haven't really been factual in terms of what you are experiencing. You're going all over the place. So it's really important to list what you are experiencing. What has changed since the time you started experiencing the first symptom. Are you getting headaches? Are you having brain fogs? Any changes to your diet, your bowels? These are really big things that are quite important in trying to gain a diagnosis of what's going on with you, rather than to say, oh, I had a headache on Tuesday, but then Wednesday the headache wasn't there, but it returned on Friday. That doesn't help the situation.
Why are you telling my whole life?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Do you know what? Like, that's what we think we're supposed to do. Like, we honestly think, let me tell you the story. So I woke up on Tuesday and this is what happened to me. Yeah. And then it kind of drifted off. And then on Wednesday, and then the doctor is kind of looking at you like, okay, yeah, so you've got this. Here you go. Here's your prescription. So Dr. Golda, like, explain how we should be, how we should be not telling the story, but how we should be listing these symptoms and how we should like attend our appointments, basically.
Yeah, I think Juanita's completely right. Because a lot of the time we don't actually have that much time with our patients. So we're trying to like narrow it down from the little information you can give us. And a lot of the times when people go to their GP, which is why you hear a lot of stories of people feeling like their GP dismissed them, most GPs have like 10-minute appointments. And when they go over, they're considered to be breaching and they get charged whenever they're breaching. So that's why you'll tend to find that your GP's there like, so, because there's a certain amount of patients they have to see within the day. And if they breach and don't manage to see all of them, then they get charged.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why your GP's there like, so can we speed up the story?
I hope you guys are understanding this. So we've got to speak quickly, guys. Like,
so a lot of the time it will be someone comes in with like, oh, I'm just not quite feeling right. And the GP is like, what does that mean? And the thing is, we have a lot of medical knowledge, but we need to apply that medical knowledge to the person in particular. And we can only do that based on how much information you give us. Yeah. Say, for example, you tell me, you know what, I haven't been feeling quite right. I've been feeling really tired all the time. I can't think of anything that's happened recently. Like I haven't had any loss or I haven't had any issues with my job, etc. That kind of paints a picture of like, oh, okay, in my mind, I'm going to move away from the depression route because I can't think of something that would have triggered that. So now I'm like, okay, cool. I need to think about this is actually being caused by something. And then if you're like, great, and you tell me that, you know what, my mum had a similar situation where around my age, she started to feel some type of way, something changed. Then I'm like, oh, okay, this could be like a genetic thing. So a lot of it is kind of giving us key information that helps to narrow things down. And I will tell you now, you do not get that key information from Dr. Google, okay? You do not. Dr. Google makes the information from like this much to that much.
Yeah.
It does not help.
Yeah.
Just not.
So basically, the key thing here is that when we are attending our doctor's appointments, that we need to like go prepared, kind of thing. Don't just go. Yeah, that's what I'm getting from it. I'm getting that you have to go prepared. Don't just go trying to think of, okay, do you know what? I'm gonna make sure that this doctor hears my full, 2-week story of things that happened Monday all the way down to Saturday in the space. Right. So would you say then journaling our health is important. So like actually taking out a journal to say, okay, on Monday I felt like this, because sometimes you forget the intensity of what you're feeling. So by the time that you do go to the doctors, maybe what you felt on Monday, I mean, you might still feel a certain type of way by Thursday, but on Monday it might have been really, really intense. And you might forget the intensity by Thursday. So would you say having a journal, maybe just jotting down when you're, I don't know, I hope you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that can really help, because it helps us to keep track of what's kind of changed over time. And I think when you're journaling, it's journaling specific things that you're like, this is what's really bothering me. So like a lot of the time when you go to the doctor, the first time what they're going to do is they're either going to try and diagnose you, which is difficult to do in the time given. So our priority is, what can I do to make this person feel better in the meantime? So it's like, if you're feeling really tired and you're struggling to sleep and it's affecting your work, and you've journaled like what your sleeping's been like over the past 4 weeks, in my mind, my priority is now, what can I do to help this person get some sleep? And it's really important that actually you then tell me what's a priority to you, and I can make that a priority to me. Because where sometimes we don't meet well in the middle and we're both kind of dissatisfied with what's happened, it's where I think that you need this is what's important to you, whereas you're like, nah, that wasn't important to me. So for example, what Juanita was describing is the GP was like, oh, in my mind, this person's really worried about their health. Let me give them some antidepressants to make them feel better. But no, Juanita's concern was, something about me has changed. This is what I've noticed over time. My priority is that I need to find out what's causing it. And we kind of go from there. And then if you want to go further, then it's like, in my mind, something has really changed. Hey, Dr. Google has said that actually I should perhaps get a blood test. Cool. As a GP, more than happy to give you a blood test, because blood tests are quick, easy, and they're cheap. So there's no harm whatsoever in making what is really worrying you the biggest thing very clear from the get-go, and also requesting what you then need on the basis of that. You're totally entitled to that. I think the journaling is a good idea. Yeah, of course. Like, there's absolutely no harm whatsoever in you saying, you know what, something has felt different. I'm concerned it might be this and that. Can I please have a blood test?
Yeah.
There is no harm in that at all. People even come to us just requesting general health screens, and we're totally entitled to a routine health screen.
See, why don't we get told any of these? Why don't we get told these things?
Yeah, that's the thing. That is the thing.
So we're entitled to all of this stuff.
Yeah, like most of the time you're entitled to a routine health screen. And what that usually involves is a blood test. That's usually the priority, getting a blood test done, because then they can just request lots of different things, and it's a general screen. One of the biggest things I tell people to get their health screen for is, please, you need to know what your blood type is. You need to know whether you have a chance of, for example, sickle cell, or other things that may affect you later down the line, for example, when you get pregnant. So I think it's really important to get that health screen as early as possible. And sometimes it's picking up really small things. Like, some people have come to us and they're like, I feel really, really tired. And we're like, okay, you know what, let's just do a blood test. And we find that actually they're feeling so tired because their iron levels are really, really low. And that's something that can be sorted out actually really easily. When you leave it for a long time, it actually becomes more difficult to sort out later on. So I always advocate for people getting a health screen as soon as possible.
Right. Okay, I hope you guys are taking notes. And here is a question that I'm going to put out to the viewers. How many people actually know their blood type?
That's the question.
How many people actually know? I put this out on Instagram, but I'm gonna put this out again. How many people actually know their blood type? Let's wait and see. I know this only because I've had 2 kids. I wouldn't have known before. Like, let me be honest, I wouldn't have known before. And that's only because, as well, I have something called an anti-E body. I think that's what it's called. Yes. So that means if I need a blood transfusion, I have to have the blood with the anti-E whatever. It has to be specific, basically. Let's see. Okay, some people know it. Doesn't know. Go and get a blood test. That's what I'm gonna say to everybody. Go and get a blood test. It's important that you do know. I think correct me if I'm wrong if we have any Americans on, but I think they have it on their IDs. Like their blood group. I think they have it on their IDs. I can't remember. Go find out. Anybody from America, can you correct me on this? Does the test come at a fee? That's what we've been asked. Does the test come at a fee?
To get your blood group?
Yeah, apparently.
No, not at all.
There's no fee.
No, there's no fee. And actually, most people should, your parents, depending if they've kept it or not, but every baby, as part of the newborn testing, part of the test will bring up their blood group. So usually in the baby book, it puts a copy of their blood group in there. So that's how some people might know. Depends on if your parents have kept it or not. But everyone's blood group is tested as soon as they're born, because it's one of the ways we find out if someone has any blood conditions or not, like sickle cell or thalassemia. So usually it's in that baby book. But obviously, if you don't know at all, then you can still get a test later on. Yeah, and for some people, it's really useful because, for example, if I have an organ donor card or a health card, I can put my blood group in there. And so, God forbid, something happens and I'm in a big accident and I need a transfusion. Sometimes it's a lot easier for them already knowing what your blood group is. Can be really handy, which is why a lot of Americans have it as part of their health card that they carry around.
Oh, that's it. Health card, not the ID. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know why I thought it was the ID.
Same thing.
So, same thing. So literally, we've learned about the things that we are actually entitled to get from our doctors, guys. So please don't feel shy to go to your doctors to ask about certain things, especially when you feel like something is wrong. And if you feel like you're being dismissed, like, request a blood. If you haven't had a blood test already, request one, because I do know of somebody that had symptoms like, being tired all the time, and they just thought that they were overworking themselves, not knowing that they did have anemia. And so things like this, and anemia is it's quite simple to treat. It's just having iron tablets, right? Is it ferrous sulfate? Yeah, a lot of the time.
Yeah, they can just give you iron supplements. Yeah, it's usually quite easy to treat. I mean, there's 2 easy things typically to treat if you're feeling really tired. It's either that your iron is low or your vitamin D is low. And being in the UK, the number of people with low vitamin D is a lot. So I actually advise everybody to be taking vitamin D supplements just as standard. Because that's quite a common cause of tiredness.
That leads me on to a post that Tay put on her Instagram the other day in regards to vitamin D and the fact that, because I just thought if I have enough in my food, I don't really need the sun. But you put up a post. Can you share a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So as Dr. Sophie mentioned, that vitamin D deficiency is very common here in the UK, and not many of us are actually having enough vitamin D. In the diet, actually, there's only a limited amount of foods that contain vitamin D, so it's not as widespread as other nutrients. So in terms of the types of foods that contain vitamin D, are things like your eggs, oily fish, some fortified breakfast cereals, liver. But then obviously if you don't eat meat, then you'll be more likely to be at risk of vitamin D deficiency. But the main source of vitamin D is sunlight, and in the UK we're not really blessed with enough sunlight, and actually there are certain periods in the year that we can actually get enough vitamin D if we go out in the sun, and that's between March to September. So during those months, I call it the vitamin D making season, because that's when the sun is strong enough for us to make vitamin D. And then outside of those months, we're not really making much vitamin D, obviously, because the sun's not out as much. But then, as individuals who have really dark skin, like Black individuals or South Asian individuals, even if you do go out in the sun, you need to stay out for a really long time in order to make enough vitamin D compared to a Caucasian person or someone with a lighter skin. And so that's why it's recommended that we need to take vitamin D supplements all year round. About 5 years ago, actually, they said only take vitamin D supplements during the winter seasons, because that's when you don't really get much sunlight. But then for Black individuals or individuals with dark skin, we need to be taking vitamin D supplements all year round. So even if it's sunny outside, you need to take your vitamin D supplements. But then, if you do go out often, they do say that you need to go out on a daily basis between March to September. And for people who work or who go to school, it's not really that realistic. So that's why we need to be taking our vitamin D supplements. So yeah, it's really, really important.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that deep. I mean, apart from the fact that when I had my midwife visits, because my daughter is only breastfed, I was told to get, vitamin D, what's it called? Drops.
Yeah.
Drops for her. And then I also had to take vitamin D too. But I just thought it was linked to the whole pregnancy, childbirth thing, because you have to take your prenatal vitamins and all of this kind of stuff. I didn't realize it's actually an all the time kind of thing.
Yeah, so for Black individuals, there's like every single day we should be taking our vitamin D supplements. For pregnant women, because we know that pregnant women are at risk of vitamin D deficiency. So there are what you call at-risk groups, and pregnant women fall into that at-risk group. So they need to be taking their vitamin D supplements. So Black people, Asian people, we're also at the at-risk group of vitamin D deficiency.
So we have to do it all year round.
Yeah, all year round. There are people who stay at home, so we call them housebound. Maybe they have mobility issues. They have to take the vitamin D supplements, on a daily basis. So it's really, really important.
Oh, wow. Do you know, I'm learning a lot today, guys. I didn't know any of this stuff. Okay, it's not like I've done the course. I didn't know any of this stuff either. So I hope you guys are learning loads today, because I personally am. I'm learning quite a bit. So in terms of like our health food wise, okay, because I know you're a certified doctor, but you'd rather us call you Tay. As much as I want to call you Dr. Tay, you won't let me. But honestly, like, apart from the fact that food can help us lose weight, gain weight, all of that kind of stuff, how important is our diet to our health? Because I'm not gonna lie, I don't just eat for nourishment. I eat because I like what I'm eating.
And that's fine.
I personally, listen, who else is guilty? I eat because I like it. I enjoy eating. That sometimes it's a hobby, okay, which isn't a good thing. Sometimes I eat because I just want to chew something. Yeah, I don't eat because I'm hungry. I just, you know, or I'm bored. I just eat. How important is our diet? Not regardless of weight. How important is what we're taking?
It's very, very important. I mean, good nutrition is just really important for our general health. What we eat contains important nutrients that we need to, reduce our risk of certain conditions. In some cases, it can manage our conditions as well. So we spoke a lot about people who have iron deficiency anemia. So if you are consuming foods that are iron rich, you'll be able to manage your condition. So nutrition is very, very important. Nutrition is very, very important in different life stages as well, because as women, depending on where we are at life, whether we're planning to be pregnant or we are pregnant, or even mothers breastfeeding, our nutritional requirements does change, and it's just really, really important that we know what foods we're consuming to support our, I guess, just to support our life really, because for example, if you're planning to be pregnant, it's really important that you are taking your folic acid or consuming foods that contain folate, just to support you and also support the baby as well, and reduce the risk of baby having certain complications. When you are pregnant, your nutritional needs does increase, so there's more needs for your calcium, more needs for your protein, even vitamin D as well, making sure that you're taking vitamin D supplements, for example. When you're breastfeeding, those demands are even more, because baby is literally taking out all of the nutrients,
sucking the whole entire life out of you.
So it's just really important that you are replenishing your body, and not just even during your life stages, but then just to reduce your risk of certain medical conditions as well. So for example, there's lots of studies showing that those who eat lots of fruits and vegetables, they'll be able to reduce their risk of cancer, for example, or high blood pressure or type 2 diabetes. If you're having bowel issues.
What if you don't like the taste? I'm just asking for a friend.
Are you sure? So if you don't like the taste, there's sneaky ways you can incorporate fruits and vegetables in your diet. So if you don't really like fruits, eating whole fruits, maybe you can make a smoothie. However, with smoothies, I do say try to be mindful of how much you are consuming, because it does contain a lot of sugar. But then you can also make like interesting fruit salads if you want to. So there are just sneaky ways you can incorporate fruits. Maybe if you're having cereals, for example, you can chop some fruits in your cereals or in your porridge. And even things like vegetables as well. If you're making stews, you can add vegetables inside of that. I'm Nigerian, I love my fried rice, so that's another way to incorporate some vegetables. You can add your peas, your carrots, etc. You can also have it as a snack as well. You can make soup out of it. So some people like to make carrot soup or tomato soup. So there are sneaky ways you can increase your fruit and vegetable intake. But just to answer your question, nutrition is just so important for so many reasons.
See, guys, don't just eat because you want to eat.
But then it's actually okay to eat because you want to eat. I mean, I said something on my Instagram, I think a couple months ago, that food is more than just nutrition. Yes, we need to make sure that we are getting the right amount of nutrients, but how boring would life be if all we ate was salads or quinoa? I mean, that would be pretty boring. So, food is more than nutrition. Food is a way to enjoy yourself. So it's actually okay if you want to have ice cream or want to have biscuit. Food is a way to embrace culture, embrace tradition.
Yes.
When we are celebrating certain milestones in our lives, there's going to be food around us. So it's actually okay to be consuming your favorite snacks or your favorite food. But then I think it's just really important to just be mindful of how often you're eating certain types of foods and the quantity as well, your portion sizes. Yeah. But it's okay, if you want to have a biscuit, you shouldn't feel guilty. And there's something that I like to tell people to do, which is mindful eating, because, you know, as you mentioned, sometimes people eat because they're bored, or they don't really have much to do, or they just want to keep their mouths busy. Yeah, and that's the thing. And yeah, and I tell people to practice mindful eating. So, you know, when you're feeling the urge to eat, I tell people to just reflect on that feeling, and identify, why do you want to eat that biscuit? Is it because you're physically hungry and you want to eat it, or is it because you're bored and, you know, there's nothing else to do? And I guess that stems from emotions. So it's just really important to identify those emotions, whether it's boredom, anger, you know, you just been upset, and deal with that. So if you are bored, find something that's non-food related to entertain yourself. It might just be journaling, or going for a walk, or, you know, reading a book or something, because that can actually help to, I guess, prevent you from overeating or comfort eating.
That makes sense. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. I hope it makes sense to everybody else. Juanita, back to you. I wanted to ask you a question. So, in terms of your diagnosis, how has that affected your life?
It has hugely affected my life. One of the main ones is my diet. It has made me build up so much tolerances to certain foods. One particular food is like gluten. My stomach does not really, it doesn't work. It's like oil and water. It just doesn't mix. Rice, which was one of my favorite foods, we don't agree anymore. It's you know, it's trips to the toilet, you know, nice long romantic trips to the toilet. And what else? Milk, for example, milk. So it's literally affected like what I eat, how I eat, and also meat, and my stomach doesn't agree. It takes me longer to digest meat. And I would say meat and me doesn't mix, and that has had a massive like impact on my life, in terms of, maybe I would see my husband eating fufu and I can't join him, and I'm just like watching there, licking my lips, like, and some days I'm like, do you know what, I want to eat it, and then next day I'll be suffering. So yeah, it has impacted greatly.
Not to cut you off,
no problem.
But was this happening before the diagnosis? So were you having these symptoms?
I
was this part of the symptoms as well?
I was, but I didn't pay it no mind. I think when you're younger, I think there's some sort of invincibility you have. You don't really take things too seriously. And I was having those experiences there where, you know, frequency to go to the toilet wasn't there, in terms of like, you know, opening your bowels or anything like that. That wasn't happening as often. And I just thought, oh, it's probably normal, until, you know, other symptoms started to happen. And that's when I realized that was the sole cause of it. So yeah.
Oh wow. So it's literally affected your day-to-day life.
It has. And I feel like when you have a condition, it's so important that you really, you know, kind of watch your diet, because I feel like your diet also impacts your condition. If you're not taking care of yourself, that has adverse effects on your diet. I believe Ty did a recent post about like Maggie cubes, salts, and I think it was monosodium. You done it like a post about it, and certain things you need to be mindful of in your diet that you need to make sure that you're not having too much of, because it can worsen your diet. For example, diabetes, you know, not having increasing your sugar intake can have adverse effects on your diabetes. It can worsen it, which can lead to having problems with your cholesterol, and then later on your heart, and you don't want it to get there. So I definitely believe that your diet is incredibly important. It plays an integral part on your health. Yeah.
I agree with that. With my second pregnancy, my first pregnancy, I felt very, very sluggish. And I've never really had, I've never really been a sluggish kind of person. For those of you that have been following me for years, you know, Deborah Darling is go, 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 go. And my first pregnancy, I started feeling sluggish. And I thought, well, I've heard that these are like kind of part of the pregnancy symptoms where you feel a lot more tired because your body is producing another human being, until my midwife just said, oh, let me just do another blood test just to see. And I'm so thankful to God that she did do that. You know, or if I didn't know, I probably should have requested. And so this is why I love that you guys did mention that it's important that you can request if you're not too sure about something. And I'm happy that my midwife did, and she found out that my iron reserves were quite low. And so I had to actually have an IV because it was too late in my pregnancy for me to have the tablets. So they put it literally straight into my blood, but then 2 days after I gave birth. And so they couldn't do the second IV. Then the second pregnancy, around the 5th month mark, I think, I don't remember, I think it's like 26 weeks or something like that, you have to do a glucose tolerance test. And that basically measures how, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because I don't know if I'm right. Doctors, please help me. Doctors and nurses, please help me. You do a glucose tolerance test to see how your body reacts to sugars. So whether your insulin is, listen, I don't know the terms, but you guys know. So what basically happened was you have to drink this. They do a blood test before. So that's your fasted glucose reading. So you don't eat from midnight till like 9, 10 a.m. or whatever. Then they do a blood test. Then they give you this like really sugary drink. And you've got to kind of just back the drink. And when you're pregnant and you're nauseous, it's not nice. But anyway, they do that. And then afterwards, you come back, I believe it's 2 hours after or an hour after, to see how your body broke down the sugars. Am I correct? Okay, good. And so after doing that test, I then get a call from my midwife to say that I have to go and see the diabetic people, the gestational diabetic people at the hospital. So I went, and basically my body wasn't breaking down the sugars properly during that pregnancy. And so I did notice, and listen, hear me out, guys, and this is why going to see your doctors and mentioning stuff is so important. I fainted when I was at work at one day. I was dizzy and then I fainted and I couldn't go to work for 2 days. I spoke to my GP, and because of COVID, I couldn't go in. Spoke to my GP. She prescribes me iron. She doesn't check anything. She looks at, you know, my previous blood test and she's like, oh, okay, your iron is borderline, but it's not low or anything like that, but I'm going to prescribe you iron anyway. Okay. Now something in me, and this is where God and the medical stuff all comes together, guys. Something in me was like, do not take that prescription. Do not take that prescription. So I never even went to get the prescription to even take it. But I remember my dad being like, I thought you weren't well. Like, why are you not going to get your medicine? But I didn't go and get it. So thank God the glucose tolerance test came and happened and whatever. What I then found out was that my glucose level was dropping, like it would go from normal to just extremely low like that. And that's why the dizzy spells and the fainting was happening. And so because of that, they started treating me by changing my diet and exercise. Because they were like, okay, let's see how you go with diet and exercise before giving you a prescription. So here is one of those instances where it's like, oh my goodness. So I honestly almost got misdiagnosed and was given a prescription for something I didn't need, because then checking my iron levels again, my iron was perfect, but it was just that my body wasn't handling the glucose properly, basically. I don't know what it was doing, but it just wasn't. And so because of that, I had to change in the last trimester of my pregnancy. I had to change my diet significantly. I was addicted to Cheerios, guys. Okay, I don't know what it was about Cheerios in that pregnancy, but Cheerios was my thing. But the sugar in Cheerios, I did not know that Cheerios was that bad. So my doctor was literally like, okay, Christmas is coming up. I know you're going to spend time with your family, blah, 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 this and that. Just maybe don't have mac and cheese and rice on the plate. Maybe just have a little bit of the mac and cheese and just don't have the rice. Or if you're going to have potatoes, don't have rice and potatoes. So it's about managing and because you can still live a quote unquote normal life. It's just going to be a new normal. But it's about making sure that you are looking after yourself and you are speaking to these medical professionals and you're telling them the truth. There's no point going to an appointment or going to see your doctor or your nurse or anything like that and not telling them the absolute truth. You're doing yourself harm if you don't tell them the truth. Because then when I mentioned the dizzy spells to my doctor, she then, sorry, not to my doctor, to the diabetic, I don't know what they're called. I'm just going to call her the doctor of diabetes. I'm just going to call her that. When I mentioned that to her, she said, yes, that's what you've been experiencing. So now it's just a matter of you eating regularly. Don't wait for like 4 or 5 hours and let your blood glucose just drop to the point where you're like, because literally, guys, the moment it happens, we had to, and she said, just keep sweets. I was allowed to keep sweets in my bag. So anytime, I'd feel a bit and I needed a pick me up, she's like, have 1 or 2 sweets, that's it. I'm gonna pick me up and then have a meal. Have a meal and check. So I had to literally do the finger pricking every morning and after every single meal, just to make sure I was eating the right things. And anything that I noticed would spike up my levels, I literally just had to cut that thing out or just have less of it. And so here's an example, guys, of where, number one, I was listening to the medical staff and I was also listening to the Holy Spirit inside of me. Because at the same time, listen, and I'm sure you guys can all agree with me as believers as well, that, there are times, doctors are humans, medical staff are all humans. They're not always going to get it 100% bang on. And so it's important that you are prayerful about your own health. So when you are going to speak to them, that the Holy Spirit is going before you and probably speaking to them and telling them about you, so that when they are diagnosing you or when they are talking to you about your own health, that they're not going amiss, that they are actually speaking to you from what God wants you to. Because there's something that we always say, whose report are you going to believe, the doctors or the Lord's? Okay, there are some doctors that are actually believers. We have doctors, we have medical staff that are actual believers. I thank the Lord. My firstborn was delivered by a pastor's wife. Okay, she was a pastor's wife. The lady that delivered my baby was a pastor's wife. The second time round, during pushing, I think just before I pushed, I actually prayed for her. I said, Lord, if she doesn't know you, I pray that she has an encounter with you. I don't know why I prayed that for her, but I prayed for her, okay? But honestly, pray for your doctors, pray for your medical staff, pray. They need prayers too, because it is not an easy field to be in. And so I want to ask you, Dr. Golder, like, what advice would you give us in regards to like how we approach our health? Like, a lot of us feel intimidated by doctors. I don't know about anybody else that's watching, but when you start saying terms that I don't understand, like I automatically think it's negative, because I'm like, if it was positive, you'd use layman terms, like. But when they start saying all these terms, I'm looking at them and I'm like, so is that good or is that bad? But I'm the kind of person, I ask a lot of questions. What advice would you give those of us that feel very intimidated by these big medical terms and just confusion when they go and see their doctor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I totally understand why people are fearful at certain times of going to the doctor. Sometimes it's you're worried about what they might tell you. And I'll give an example, which was unfortunately quite sad. So I had a lady that came in about 2 weeks ago now. And during COVID, she had noticed a lump in her breast, thought nothing of it and was like, it's fine, I'll leave it. I'm sure it won't be an issue. And she was a bit like, I don't really want to go to the doctors. I'm not a doctor person. I've been healthy this whole time. There's no need. So she left it for a while. A couple of months later, she felt like it was growing, but she was like, oh, I'm sure it's nothing. So she didn't actually come to the hospital till about a year later. By that time, unfortunately, it had spread completely. So we did a full test, examined her, sent off, took like biopsies, which is like little samples, because we were like, okay, what is going on? Because this lady's only in her 50s. Unfortunately, we found out this week that actually this lady not only has cancer, but a cancer that has spread throughout her body. And unfortunately, we had to tell her this week that actually it's untreatable. And it's so far spread just within a year that we actually can't do anything for her anymore. And currently the prognosis is that she will die in the next couple of weeks to months. God can do anything, and I believe that he can turn that around. But it was really sad because when we were discussing it with her and the cancer doctors, they were saying how, like, when we actually looked at the test results, the type of cancer it is, if you had come in a year ago, we could have treated this completely. You would have been cured. But because you left it for a whole year, by that time it spread to areas where it's just now beyond our control. And what she said to me was that she felt really fearful about what the doctors were going to tell her. And I completely understand and empathize with that. But actually, it's your health. And I understand that a lot of people feel fearful or not as confident or don't trust their doctors because of experiences that they've had. And I always tell every patient, at the end of the day, it's your health, it's your life. You have every right to advocate for your own health and well-being. And if you don't feel confident or comfortable in doing that yourself, bring somebody with you. I have some patients who their relative can be a pain in my backside sometimes, but they have that daughter,
I'm that
they
relative.
have that niece,
I'm that relative.
who is calling me all the time for an update, who comes with them to appointments and is grilling me. And I think that is an amazing thing to have, especially if you feel nervous or scared or anxious or worried about coming to the doctors. Bring somebody with you. There's absolutely no harm in doing that. Write stuff down. Ask doctors, can you print that out for me? When a doctor, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We have lots of resources that we can print and give out to people. A patient asked me one day, like, I don't understand the medication you're giving me. We had a leaflet for it. I printed it out. I gave it to them. A lot of the time as well, it's if we give you, and I am guilty. Sometimes I speak to patients in absolute jargon and I'm like, I stop for a moment and I'm like, this actually makes no sense. And I'm saying words where if I was on the other side of this, I'd be absolutely terrified. There is no harm whatsoever in being like, can I just stop you for a second? Because I have no idea what you've just said. And now I'm like really scared that I have something because you just gave me some 13-letter word that sounds like this is the end. And there's no harm whatsoever in telling your doctor to clarify. In fact, we get in trouble if we've told you something you do not understand. A lot of what we do is making, because patients have to understand what what they have and what's going to be involved in it. That's why a lot of our ethos, especially in the NHS, is patient-centered care. So if you've told the patient that they have something, and an hour later someone comes to them and says, do you understand what you have? And they say no, as a doctor or a healthcare professional, we've done a disservice if a patient doesn't understand what they have, or what they're gonna, or the treatment they're now having, or the medication that they're taking. So there is absolutely no harm whatsoever in clarifying things until you completely understand them. And it's really interesting because I've seen a massive disparity in this. A lot of the time, patients that I meet who are ethnic minority, Asian or Black, they don't clarify things much. And sometimes I've seen them taking a lot of the word of healthcare professionals as gospel. Like you said, we are human and we make mistakes. We really, really do. And sometimes we don't provide the best care that we should. Sometimes we assume that you have something that you actually don't have. We are driven by a lot of our biases. So sometimes we're quick to say that, oh, this woman has depression, when actually she has a condition that is causing her to feel this way. So a lot of it as well is actually, sometimes we need you to call us out on things. And I've noticed that a lot of non-minority groups are really good at this. And they tend to really push and probe you about stuff. And they don't just take your word as gospel. Whereas a lot of ethnic minorities, they're usually like, okay, doctor, yes, doctor, whatever you say, doctor. And I'm like, no, please don't, please don't say that, because at the end of the day, I will see you maybe for 1 hour or for 10 minutes, and then I leave the rest to you, and I'm on to the next patient. So ultimately, it's you that needs to be comfortable with what we have told you that you have, and what you're then going to need to do to be in charge of your health and to keep yourself as best as you can. So never be afraid to, like, I need you to clarify this. I need you to clear this up for me. I'm really worried about this. Can you please do this? Like, it even helps to guide us sometimes. And I've been in situations where, unfortunately, I've made assumptions about things, because sometimes it's just so busy and you're just like, oh, okay, right, you're a Black woman coming in. Typically, Black women have this issue. And I'm like, okay, cool. It's most likely this. But actually, we didn't get it quite right. And when that person was like, no, but I really don't think this is what it is. And then we go further, and you find that actually that patient really did know themselves well, and they were right, and they kind of led us in the right direction. And sometimes we need you to direct us, because whilst we understand how the human body works, the person that knows how their body works most is actually you, the patient.
You. Yeah.
Exactly.
You've hit the nail on the head there. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no worries at all.
Years ago, first time this happened to me, I was about 16 years old, and I got an allergic reaction, and I'm allergic. I didn't know, but I'm allergic to penicillin. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's an ingredient in the antibiotics. Am I correct, doctors?
Yeah.
So I've got an allergy to that, and the doctor didn't know, which is fair enough. And so because of that, I got a really bad allergic reaction, head to toe, and I was told to take antihistamines. So those of you that don't know what antihistamines are, they're in your hay fever tablets. They just basically they calm down the allergens. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
I'm gonna keep asking, am I correct? Because I don't know.
You're totally correct.
And so basically, my allergic reaction was so aggressive that the basic antihistamines weren't fighting it. So they had to increase the dosage. So, like, for example, what's it called? Purities. It is cetirizine hydrochloride. Where it says you can only take one a day, my doctor was like, take 4 a day. Doctors can do that. When you're getting it over the counter, don't do that, okay? I'm just
just saying.
Just saying. My doctor said take 4 a day, one every
Oh, I think you muted
Can
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, the AirPod died. Technology, guys. So literally, can everybody still hear me? I can't hear the guests. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I can hear you.
And so because of that, they had to take me to a specialist where they did a skin biopsy. So they took a bit of skin and sent it off for testing, because then they thought, okay, maybe it's not an allergic reaction. Maybe it's some sort of skin, whatever. Then I got prescribed with like just a list of things. Anyway, after some weeks, it went away. I was fine, but then they kept that on the list as she's allergic to penicillin. So that has just stayed on my medical record. Years later, I think about 5-6 years later, it happened again, but this time the things that they used to treat it wasn't working. And so at this point, I'm like, what's going on? And I'm trying, they're telling me that it's an allergic reaction. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like an allergic reaction though. So again, like to the doctor, it looks like an allergic reaction. But bear in mind, I'm sure Dr. Golder, you can second me on this. A lot of things are based on our white counterparts. So a lot of like skin stuff doesn't look the same on us. It doesn't appear the same way on us the way it looks on them. So they can look at my skin and think, oh well, yeah, it looks like it's this. But you, the patient, know it's like, but I don't think it's that. And I kept telling my doctors, like, I don't think it's what you guys think it is. I was sent to 4 different specialists. Nobody could tell me what it is. I did one of those allergy prick testings where they like prick different allergies in you to check if and then they were like, oh yeah, you've just got airborne allergies. So you just react to something in the air. And I'm like, what is like, I need clarification. Please tell me what that means. And literally they were like, oh well, at any point, at any time, you could just react to something in the air. I'm like, no, this one is not my portion, because you can't tell me. You can't tell me that at any point, at any time, something in the air is going to react badly with me and I'm just going to spike up. So for about a year of my life was spent scratching. I was given every type of antihistamine that they have. They've got a list of them, guys. There's a lot. There's a big list of them. And at the time I was taking, I believe, 13 tablets a day. So one of these tablets made me really sleepy. So they needed to give me another tablet to counter the sleepiness. Then another tablet I had to take 4 times a day. Then another tablet was for I'm trying to remember, but basically, let's just say the tablets were doing this to each other. And then one of the tablets gave me a mild form of asthma. So then they then had to give me an asthma pump. And it was just like, I had to keep, and I was in university at the time. So I'm trying to keep on top of my medications, trying to attend university. I couldn't attend because some days I'd just be too drowsy. I'll be high. I can honestly say, like, sometimes I just felt high because there were just too many different things that I was taking. But I say this to say this, it came back again in my first pregnancy, that I then found out that honestly, sometimes my body just decides that it doesn't like what it doesn't like. And they can't, till this day, they can't pinpoint what it is. But I take it down to this. When the doctors don't know, Master Jesus knows. Okay, guys, when the doctors do not know, always remember this, that Master Jesus knows. And so you count everything joy. You count I've got to that point where I'm like, okay, clearly this has happened because you've allowed it to happen. So let me just ask, what's the lesson in this? And then can we get to the healing bit, please? I will share the testimony afterwards. I would definitely, and then I go back to the doctors and I'm like, oh, okay, so I found out what was wrong. So the second time it was because I was dehydrated, guys. My body was trying to tell me for months and months and months that you do not drink enough water. So my body literally would flare up and it would look like an allergic reaction, but my body was actually storing the water in these bumps so that I was not losing the water. And so, listen, this is an advice that I don't know if I'm allowed to give, but I'm going to give it anyway. Sometimes just start drinking 2.5 liters of water before you go to the doctor, because sometimes it's just that your body has not got enough water. Not for real, because I feel like different things can shut down just from not having enough water, and your body is predominantly water. So if it has not got the thing that it's made up of, I'm sure something's gonna do a flashing sign to be like, hello, you top me up. Something somewhere is gonna give you a sign to like, hello. So yeah, that's kind of like my story with health. And it was really, really bad to a point where I don't have it anymore, but I had to always walk around with an EpiPen. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically like an injection full of adrenaline. Is it adrenaline? Yes. Because it stops you from going into anaphylactic shock. I feel so proud of myself because I know these terms. So that's where like is that where like your tongue swells up, and yeah, it just basically stops your body from doing that. And yeah. So I don't have to carry that anymore, praise Jesus. But I used to have to carry one of those because literally everything would go. I don't have picture references, but I've got pictures of when my face literally used to swell up like this. My lips would swell up, everything would just swell up. But honestly, on a serious note, that it's so important that you start noticing things that happen within your body. Because how the doctor, like what Dr. Golder said, the doctor only sees you for about 10-20 minutes maximum. And so you're the one that's living with you every single day. You know what you are feeling. Reiterate what you are feeling. And if you feel like your doctor's not understanding, repeat it in another way so that they do understand it well. Because sometimes I feel like I've said one thing, then the doctor says something back, and I'm like, I didn't say that. That's not what I said. This is what I said. Can we go based on what I said, please? Not what you think. Get to know your body. Get to know what triggers your body to give you warnings. For me, it's dehydration. When I'm dehydrated, all sorts of things start happening to me. So the first thing I do when I start feeling weird is I start drinking water. For somebody else, it might be something different. You know, for somebody else, it might be that you're maybe eating too much salt. It may be that you're not having enough salt. It may be that you've had too much sugar. Maybe you're not having enough sugar. It's all manner of things, but it's important for us to actually look after our bodies. Because I always say, if you want to be the best you've got to be in the best health to do the things that you are meant to be doing. I'm going to open up for question time now. So we have 45 minutes of whatever you guys want to ask within reason, please. And please be respectful as always, because Mama C doesn't mind to call you out, because you don't have the prophet today. You have Mama C. So Mama C doesn't mind to call you out, okay? But I hope you guys have learned a lot today. I really, really do hope you guys have learned a lot. But please, please, please ask questions. Ask questions. We would love to see your question. I did see a question earlier. Somebody asked about vitamin D dosage, like how much there's. Anybody can answer that. I don't know.
Yeah, so I can answer it. So with vitamin D, for the general population, we're supposed to be having 10 micrograms of vitamin D a day. So you'll probably see it on the packaging as 10 UG, or you might see it as 400 IU, which is the equivalent of 10 micrograms. So that's how much we're supposed to be having. However, there might be some people who may need a bit more. So I know for myself personally, I need 25 micrograms just because I'm at risk of vitamin D deficiency, and some people might need a bit more than that. But it's really important to speak to your GP first so that they can tell you what your correct dosage should be. However, there are some studies showing that if you do have more than 10 micrograms, it's totally fine. It's not going to harm you. However, don't have no more than 100 micrograms of vitamin D, which is 4,000 IU. And I've seen a lot of them being sold in the shops. And I always have to tell the shop manager off, like, you shouldn't be selling those. But don't have no more than 100 micrograms of vitamin D supplements, because if you do have that, that might cause some harm. So 10 micrograms should be the minimum, up to 75 micrograms if your GP has prescribed that to you, but it shouldn't be no more than 100 micrograms.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that. So we have another question. What would you say about the frequent use of microwaves and its effects on our health? I love a microwave. Like, microwave is amazing, but yeah, sorry to the experts.
I would say
anybody can answer that.
Okay, I would say just be mindful of the packaging that you use or whatever you put in the microwave. Is it microwave safe? Is it something that you could probably put over the cooker? Because I always tend to go for the cooker than using the microwave. And because speaking from from a background of being African, you tend to have loads of plastic bowls from when you have had Chinese or whatever, and you tend to, warm the food in that, but you need to find out or ascertain whether it's microwave safe to warm it in there, and also to read about the foods that you put in the microwave. For example, let's say juices. When you open a carton of juice, it should be consumed within at least 2 to 3 days. It shouldn't be left there. It's classed as unsafe to leave juice that long after opening it. So you need to be mindful of the foods you're having and making sure that would it decrease the properties of the food or the nutrients that I'm getting in the food. That's what you need to ascertain when you're warming foods in the microwave. I think that's also important, as well as whether it's microwave safe as well. So just be mindful. Is it okay to reheat this food in the microwave? Does it lose its properties in terms of the benefits that it's going to provide my body? You need to ascertain that. So read about it, research about it. It's really important to know what you're putting in your body as well. So I'll say it from that perspective.
I love that you mentioned that, because my Africans will know exactly what I'm about to say. Sometimes you check the food based on how it smells. When it's in the fridge, you kind of check, well, if it don't smell and it don't look bad, it should be fine. But from my chemistry background, listen, you don't know, and my biology background, you can't actually see everything. And so sometimes there are things growing and they are so small that you can't see them, but trust me, they are there, and they are enough to do some damage to you. So it's really, really, really important that you just don't go based on smell and sight. That if something literally says used by this date, please throw it in the bin. It's all right. Just buy another one. Just throw it in the bin, guys. It's not worth it. It is not worth it. Your drink, if the juice has been there 2 to 3 days, throw it away. It's okay. Just throw it, because you don't want to get something just because you just follow the instructions on the packaging. Literally, just throw it away. It's okay. Buy another one. Okay, it's all right. I'm gonna put another question up. If someone has been diagnosed with fibroids, are they able to request for another scan in the future to check if they have shrunk, or does something have to happen first before requesting another scan? That's a really, really good question. Dr. Golda, would you like to help us?
Yeah, I can take this one. So to reassure lots of the ladies out there, particularly lots of Black women who I know struggle with fibroids, you are not alone. 50% of Black women have fibroids. It's very, very normal.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a hefty percentage, to be fair. They're not quite sure why it's more common in Black women. They think it might have to do with diet, but also hormone levels in Black women being slightly different from hormone levels in non-Black women. So it's a variety of factors. So usually if someone's been diagnosed with thyroid, you find that most people find out because either they're trying to get pregnant and they may be having difficulties, or they've been having heavy periods. Those are the two ways it's usually found out. Usually they don't really do anything about fibroids unless it's compressing somewhere. So it might be like compressing your bladder, or compressing another part of your body. Or if you're trying to get pregnant and it's a kind of fibroid that will affect your fertility or will affect the baby from growing. So in terms of if you can request another scan in the future, if you are planning on getting pregnant, you can definitely, part of the process will be checking for stuff like that. And if you do get pregnant and they find that you have fibroids, sometimes what they do is that they will decrease the intervals between your checks. So they'll be scanning you more often, because what happens is that when people get pregnant, your hormone levels go a bit woo, and fibroids can grow. So that should be done as standard. Another reason to check it, to request another scan, is that if you're finding that you're getting really heavy periods, they're getting heavier. Also, if your periods are getting really painful, those are the kind of two sets of reasons where you can request for another scan. But usually fibroids are meant to be pretty harmless, and sometimes they completely go away on their own. Sometimes they grow. Sometimes you get multiple fibroids. And it affects people so differently. Some people will have them and they will never know until it's randomly picked up, but it doesn't cause them any issues. And then you have that all the way up to people who their fibroids are in places or are so large that it's affecting them getting pregnant, or it's causing things, unfortunately, like a miscarriage. So I think as soon as it's picked up, your doctor should then guide you on the extent of your fibroids. So the most important questions to ask are usually, can you tell me the size of my fibroid? And can you tell me what type of fibroid it is? Those are the two most important things. And I say, particularly the second one, what type of fibroid it is really important, because there's a particular type and it's called a submucosal fibroid that can affect fertility. So that's why it's so important to find out the size and then the type of fibroid that you have, and then kind of let yourself be guided from there on what to do. And most importantly, when you're getting to a stage when you want to try for a child, that's when you want to be having conversations with your midwife and with your obstetrician, which is the pregnancy doctor, about, okay, from the type of fibroid I have, what does it look like? Is it going to affect baby's growth? Is it going to affect my fertility? Have those conversations early on. Another thing I will say, though, is a lot of people can sometimes be quite quick to say, I want to get rid of this fibroid. I don't like the idea of having this in my body. I totally understand that. And I think it's totally normal to feel that way. But to be completely honest and transparent, one of the issues is if you're quick to push for surgery for a fibroid, you'll find that surgery will then cause its own issues, which we sometimes describe as scarring. So if you have this fibroid in your uterus and you're quick to get it removed, sometimes it can cause further scarring, which can actually make the issue worse rather than better. The other thing as well is sometimes when you remove a fibroid, it can actually grow back again because it's dependent on your hormone levels. So I always say to people that unless it's a type of fibroid, which is why I'll say again, always ask about the type that is going to affect your fertility, then look into getting it removed. But if it's not going to cause any issues, actually it's fine to leave it alone. And it's also fine to pray that it just completely goes. It happens, that it just disappears and they can't find it anymore. So yeah, be really wise and Holy Spirit led in the decisions that you then make about having these fibroids. And don't let the fear that a lot of people push about, oh, you have fibroids, oh God, how are you going to get pregnant? Oh, this is a big issue. Don't let that drive your decision making, because actually you can have them and you'll be absolutely fine. I have a history of fibroids in my family. My mum has multiple fibroids. It didn't cause her any issues. She had 4 kids with no problem whatsoever. So there's a massive range, and I would say deal with it in accordance to how it's affecting you personally. Yeah, that would be my advice.
I absolutely love that answer, because it was so like precise in terms of like how and the kind of questions that we should be asking. And I'm loving that we're doing this, because I think in all that I'm getting today, it's about what you want to get from your doctor, and it's what you get from your doctor almost depends on how much you're willing to what is the word, how much you're willing to ask, you know, and ask and asking the right questions. Because if you don't ask certain questions, you could just be worried for nothing. And I'll give you an example, guys, of again, my second pregnancy. I remember the sonographer just kind of doing her thing, and then she went, "Oh, you've got a deformed uterus." And I'm like, "Pardon you?" I said, "Excuse you, madam, what are you saying here?" And like when she said it, I'm just like, from what I know, the word deformed isn't a good thing. So can you please elaborate on what you're saying? And she said, "Oh, basically you've got a heart-shaped uterus." At that point, I'm thinking, okay, you're still not telling me what you're saying. And then she had to break it down. And she was like, "Okay, most people's uterus are shaped like this, but a few women have uteruses that are shaped like hearts, and it's called a bicornuate uterus." And I'm like, okay. Like that was literally all I did in the appointment. She was just like, "Okay, so did you not know that?" I said, "No." She goes, "Have you had kids before?" I said, "Yeah." "Were you not told?" "No." So it was never picked up in the first pregnancy. So then me doing my own research, because I thought, okay, it wasn't explained to me well enough what this thing actually is. And so basically my uterus is basically kind of shaped like that. And most people have a uterus. Is it shaped like a pear? Yes. And my uterus is basically shaped like that, which means sometimes there isn't enough space for the baby during the pregnancy. The baby starts to feel a bit squashed. Depending on the type of bicornuate uterus that you have, babies can sometimes stay in one place, and that's where they'll stay for like the whole of the pregnancy. And sometimes it means that some people struggle to get pregnant. Some people have miscarriage. There's all sorts of things, but you've got to ask, again, the right questions, and you've got to do your own research. I found that in my first pregnancy, baby was born at 36 weeks. That was because coming to the end of the pregnancy, there wasn't enough space. So baby was like, "Okay, cool, I'm ready to come out." There wasn't anything wrong with him. He came out perfectly normal, perfectly sized. There was no complications whatsoever. Now, because then I found out about this bicornuate thing, I then knew what my prayer points were. I said that this time, because now I know that I'm going to pray for full-term pregnancy, and that my uterus will create enough space for my child to be there full term, so that we won't have to stay in the hospital because baby is preterm, and we won't have to do all of these extra la-di-da-di-da-di-da checks and all of these long-winded things, because when your baby is preterm, you do have to stay in the hospital for extra checks, because now they need to make sure baby's lungs are okay, baby's kidneys are okay, like every organ is functioning properly. And I was like, I don't have time to spend time in the hospital. So then I knew what my prayer points were. And by God's grace, second baby was born at 38 plus 2, which is classified as full term. Now, because I knew about the stuff that the lady was saying, I then knew what to pray for. Sometimes when these doctors do give you something or say this is what's going on with your body, it kind of gives you a lot more fire on what to pray about. Don't always see it as a straight up negative in your life. See it as this is what now I know I need to pray about. This is what maybe I need to like focus, like hone in on. If this is where I need to do warfare prayers, this is where I'm going to head it towards. If this is where I need to get intentional about my prayer life, then I know where I'm targeting it. So don't always think that it's negative. Sometimes God wants you to press in, and sometimes God wants to use you as a testimony for somebody else. And sometimes God wants to use you as an encouragement, a point of reference for encouragement for somebody else. So don't always see diagnosis and things that the doctors say as negative things. I know it's easier said than done, but honestly, as the Bible says, count it all joy. Count it all joy. Okay, I'm gonna pick out another question. What are the symptoms of gluten intolerance? I know one of them is bloating. I don't know about the rest of them, but I know bloating, you get it bad. Bad. I had a friend, the bloating was bad. She used to fart all the time. But anyway, over to anybody, whoever wants to answer. Over to anybody.
Answer that. So the symptoms varies from person to person. So some people do experience bloating. However, it's just really important to say that just because you have bloating doesn't mean you have a gluten intolerance. So again, it's just so important to say that. So bloating, some people have really have issues with their bowel movements. So some people might experience things like diarrhea. So that's just something to be mindful of. And also some people might notice certain like skin conditions as a symptom. But I will say that if you do experience any symptoms, don't self-diagnose. It doesn't mean you should cut off gluten from your diet, because even when you go to your GP and say, oh, I think I have a gluten intolerance, they will actually tell you to try gluten even more so that they can assess whether it's a gluten intolerance or whether it's something like celiac disease, which is a more like severe condition where you're totally allergic to gluten. But I would say, when I do see patients who notice certain symptoms when they eat certain foods, I tell them to keep a food and symptom diary. So literally, record what you're eating and record the symptoms you have after you've consumed that food, because then when you go to your GP, again, that's something you can show to them and be like, okay, this is what I've been eating and these are the symptoms I'm getting, and they can do further tests. But I would say try not to cut out gluten from your diet, because you may not have a gluten intolerance. You might just have certain other issues like IBS, for example, irritable bowel syndrome, which has similar symptoms to gluten intolerance. So I would say don't cut out anything from your diet yet. Speak to your doctor first so that they can further diagnose you or assess you or refer you to a dietitian, for example, for more assistance. So yeah, these are some of the symptoms for gluten intolerance.
Thank you so much. Let me get another question. How many times should we go for general checkups in a year? Actually, before I ask that question, I'm going to ask the viewers a question. Who actually attends their yearly checkups? Who actually attends their yearly checkups? Or who actually requests for a yearly checkup? I want to see. Feel free to answer, guys. I really want to know. Just be honest. Who actually requests? I don't. I'm gonna start. I don't. I haven't been. No, I haven't been, because I've been in the hospital too much in the last 2 years. I'm not about to go. I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing medical stuff at the moment. Taking a break. Okay. Who actually attends? So that's when they do, I believe, your blood pressure, your height, your weight, blood test, yeah, that stuff. I haven't been for a while, because when you're pregnant, your blood test pretty much gets taken on every single appointment, and then during labor, the blood pressure machine is just on you forever. And yeah, I'm tired, so I don't think I need to go for one yet. Anybody? I have never had a yearly checkup. You lie. You better book one. I would say go and book one. Haven't done one in around 9 years. Okay, everybody who hasn't done one, okay? Listen, I'm going to get all my mercy on you guys. If you have not done one in the past, be a bit lenient. 18 months. It's like if you have done one in the past 18 months, I'll allow you. More than 18 months, please go and get yourself tomorrow, Monday morning, call up your GP and book in. Tell them Mama C sent you. Book in your general. Please go and book that in. Go and book that in. Go. Put it in your reminders on your phone right now. Just go and book that in. It's so important. So now this is going to be funny because when I get a dentist on here and I start asking who has been to the dentist. Listen, that's going to be the funny one. Let me find another question for us to answer. Apart from vitamin D, please could you kindly advise what other vitamins we should be taking daily? Please could you also recommend suitable brands for this? That's a good one, actually, the suitable brand bit. Anybody can answer this one.
So yeah, I don't mind answering that question. So with vitamin D, that's something that we should be taking on a daily basis. In terms of other vitamins, it might not be necessary because you can literally get most of it from your diet alone. So I know like last year with the whole COVID pandemic situation, a lot of people felt like they had to take vitamin C supplements on a daily basis and everyone's gone crazy over it. And I was just like, no, because you're just going to weed it all out anyway. But so I would say vitamin D is literally the most important thing you should be taking on a daily basis. Other nutrients you can get from your diet if you're having a well-balanced diet. And I would say that it really just depends on your life stage in terms of where you are at. So if you are planning to be pregnant, then I would say there are certain nutrients you will need to be more mindful of. So things like folic acid. So you will need to be taking a folic acid supplement every single day if you're planning to be pregnant. Or I would say if you're married and you're not using contraception, take a folic acid supplement just in case you do get pregnant. And obviously, if you are pregnant up to 12 weeks, you should still be taking your folic acid supplement. And then other nutrients, I would say, obviously, if you are pregnant as well, you'll need to stay away from vitamin A because that can negatively affect babies. So if you are taking a multivitamin supplement, just make sure that it doesn't contain vitamin A. But yeah, I think other nutrients, you can literally get it all from your diet. Like vitamin C, we need about 40 milligrams of vitamin C a day, and you can literally get all of that from having one large orange. So, if you're having a well-balanced diet, including lots of fruits and vegetables, starchy carbohydrates, protein, dairy or non-dairy alternatives, you can literally get all of the vitamins and minerals that your body needs. And in terms of recommended brands, so I don't think we're allowed to, as healthcare professionals, advise certain brands. But then I would just say with vitamin D, whichever one you go for, just make sure it contains 10 micrograms of vitamin D. Your multivitamin supplements, the A to C one that you get from Boots, that contains 5 micrograms. So it's really important to read the labels at the back of the at the back of the multivitamin supplements packaging, because sometimes it doesn't contain all of the nutrition or the right amount of nutrients that your body needs. So make sure that you are reading the labels at the back.
That's so good. It's so important, guys. Read the labels, because sometimes we be buying things, right? And just because it says multivitamin, yep, this is the good one, I'm buying that one, and then it's not actually it hasn't actually got the right amount of certain vitamins, or like if you're trying to get, like you said, you want to get one for vitamin D, but maybe the one in that packet hasn't got enough vitamin D in it, so it's almost like you're still gonna have to buy another vitamin D. So then what's the point of buying the multivitamin if you're gonna have to buy? Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Okay, let me find another question. I know you guys are talking quite a bit about the whole I've seen one about polycystic ovaries, about period pain. I can see some about fibroids. We are going to have an event on what is that group of stuff? What's the category for that? Does anyone, can you guys help me? What's that category of conversation?
What, like reproductive health, or you say?
Yeah, there we go. We're gonna have
yeah.
Thank you. We're gonna have a whole event on reproductive health. Because I think that needs its whole. We need time for that one, and I think that one probably needs like 2 episodes as well. And so we're definitely gonna do one on reproductive health, because that's one that's really, really dear to my heart. Where we're gonna have a gynecologist, a midwife, a doula, all of that kind of stuff. We're gonna have one on. I think basically we need to have like the whole pre-pregnancy stuff, pregnancy stuff, postpartum stuff. Like we kind of need to like break it down into chunks, because if we try and do it as a general thing, we're not going to be able to hit home on certain important things. But I love that you guys are asking questions today, so let's go, let's answer those questions. Oh, I've missed quite a few questions. Advice for anemic people, please. Does iron tablet make you gain weight? I saw Dr. Golder's face there. Go ahead.
No, it was does iron tablets make you gain weight? I was like, oh no, that's interesting. Advice for anemic people. Yeah, iron supplements are great. But you have to remember, iron supplements are supplements. So they are not to be a fix for anemia in itself. It's alongside other things. So a lot of it is going to be diet, which is why it's great having a dietitian here, because diet is a game changer for health. So my usual rule of thumb to make things easy for people is I say, if you're low in iron, greens. So spinach, rocket, anything green
Kale,
is usually kale. Is usually really, really good for helping with anemia. Meat as well. Red meat tends to have quite a high iron content, but we have to get that balance right, because with eating more meat, then comes other issues health-wise. So I tend to focus a lot on the greens. Iron tablet-wise, iron tablet rarely makes people put on weight. It's not a side effect. And if you've been prescribed them, I strongly advise taking them, but taking them as a supplement alongside other lifestyle changes like your diet. I had slightly low iron for a while. And one of the big things that they advised me was iron supplements, yes, but ultimately I needed to change my diet. I used to hate anything green, like I hated it. But by fire, by force, I am now one of those people that eats a lot of green stuff. Tends to be in food rather than on its own, because I need some flavor in my life. And like, yeah. But
that's okay, isn't it, Tay? That's
exactly. Just to make life a bit, it's not every day just eating grass for the sake of eating grass. Sometimes it needs to taste nice as well. So, yeah, I think diet's probably the biggest thing for that.
And can I just quickly add something as well?
Yes.
If that's okay. So yeah, as Dr. Golder said, make sure you are eating your greens. But then there's 2 different types of iron in our diet. There's the heme iron and there's the non-heme iron. So the heme iron is what we see in red meat, in chicken, in eggs. And these types of iron are more absorbed in the body. And then the non-heme iron are the ones that we see in our green leafy vegetables. And this is less absorbed in the body. And so if you are, obviously, you're supposed to be eating your greens, but then to ensure you're getting that full absorption, it's really important to have certain foods alongside of it to aid that absorption. So things like vitamin C rich foods. So these are things like your fruits, other types of vegetables as well, having an orange juice, because that can, aid that absorption. And also there are certain things that can hinder iron absorption. And so that's really important that when you are consuming certain foods that contains iron, make sure you're not drinking things like your teas and coffees, because that can hinder iron absorption, even milk as well. So we know that calcium can actually affect, iron absorption in some ways. So make sure that you're not really, well, you can have your milk, but then maybe have that gap in between, so that you can have that full absorption. And then when you are taking iron supplements as well, have a glass of orange juice, for example, because that can aid the absorption. So it's really, really important to be mindful of the types of foods you're eating alongside those foods that contains iron, because that can either
Is caffeine bad?
So caffeine, I guess obviously in excess can be not good for you, but then having small amounts is totally fine. But the compound in teas and coffee is called tannins, and that's what affects iron absorption. So it's really important that, even when you are taking supplements, don't drink it with teas or coffee. Wait at least 2 hours before or after having it. So it's just really important to just be mindful of certain things that you are eating alongside your food. It's just something to just add onto that, because a lot of people do say that, I'm eating a lot of iron rich foods, why do I still have low iron levels? And then when I assess their overall diet, it's because they're having that coffee or tea or hot chocolate alongside of their meals. And it's just really important to have that gap so that you can fully, I guess, enable that iron absorption.
Thank you so much for that. If someone has a polycystic ovary, but it is not PCOS syndrome, are there any complications with it if you still have regular periods? And what does it mean? There's a lot of questions in that question. Hold on. Let's break it down. Are there any complications with it if they still have regular periods? So if someone has the polycystic ovary, but has a polycystic ovary, but it's not PCOS, are there any complications with it if they have regular periods? That's the first question. Anybody want to answer that one?
I wasn't sure if Juanita wanted to take it first.
I don't mind, don't worry. You go first.
Okay. So polycystic ovaries is on your, so I'll describe it as your anatomy. So your ovary has had a change on an anatomy level. And what that means is what your ovary looks like is different from what a normal ovary looks like. And you have like these cysts in your ovary. So it looks different. Now, when you have polycystic ovary syndrome, that means your ovaries look different, but they've also got to the point where they then make you feel different and they're affecting the way your body works. And so when it becomes a syndrome, people have things like irregular periods, they have hair growth, they have weight gain. Some people get like diabetes. So it's more the manifestation of your ovary looking different. So usually, actually, if someone's not got to the syndrome part of it, the complications are actually pretty mild, pretty low. And if you're still having regular periods, that is absolutely great. That actually means that your polycystic ovaries are not causing your body any issues. That typically means that fertility-wise, you'll be fine. You'll be able to get pregnant normally like anybody else. And it's really important to differentiate the two. So someone can have polycystic ovaries, but not necessarily the syndrome. And where you're then needing to get more help with it is when you're starting to get symptoms like the things I've described, the irregular periods, the weight gain, the hair growth in like different places like your face, things like that. That's when it's a bit more complicated. But yeah, to the person, if you have polycystic ovaries, that is absolutely fine. You shouldn't have any complications. Regular periods is great. As soon as you start to notice any changes, your periods are reducing in frequency, abnormal hair growth, high blood sugar levels, then that's when you need to go back to the doctor, because it's good to catch it early so that we can start the medications earlier rather than later. And that's why I always talk about people taking charge of their health as much as possible. And I'll just slide this in now because my mum always used to do this growing up, and I never understood why she had this whole kit at home. But my mum has a blood pressure machine, a blood glucose machine, and she has like a oxygen levels monitor at home. And once a month, she'll just check her and my dad just to see like that everything's okay. And I used to think it was the most extra thing ever, but actually it's a very, very wise thing to have, because it just means that actually you're getting on top of things sooner rather than later, just recording down what you find. And if you do have any issues, then it's like, hey, I can go to my GP and be like, oh, I did my blood pressure the other day, and I'm finding that it's actually really high. And the reason why I advocate for those three things in particular is because, and this is me focusing on Black people, but Black people are 2-3 times more likely to get things like diabetes and high blood pressure. So actually we need to keep an eye on it more. And that means actually taking a bit of control into our hands and keeping an eye on things more so than maybe everyone else does. And also these things are actually pretty cheap. You can get a blood pressure monitor for like 15-20 pounds from Amazon. So in terms of cost, actually when health is wealth and the impact of catching things sooner rather than later, it's worth, let's say, investing 40-50 pounds in these things. So yeah, I'll just drop that in there too.
Thank you so much. So we haven't got long, guys, so I'm probably just gonna add in one more question. Let me see. What would happen if I take pregnancy care supplements when I'm not pregnant or planning to be? Just curious.
I would answer this one if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then Dr. Gadi, you can help chip in as well. So there is nothing wrong with taking pregnancy care supplements because they are part of what, obtaining women's health anyways, because we're meant to, it's important for us women to be taking B12, which helps with producing more red blood cells. It also helps with like concentration, helps with sleep, appetite, mood. Folic acid, which is B9, also is very good for our body as well. That helps with making DNA. It helps with also producing red blood cells and making the red blood cells healthy. So it helps to obtain oxygen. It helps for oxygen to bind on your red blood cells. So it helps you feel a bit more awake. So it helps with your concentration. You've got vitamin D, which is essential for bone health, teeth, and it's also good for immunity as well. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think it's always good to be prepared if you're getting to that stage of where you want to start having children. But I don't think there's anything wrong with taking those prenatal tablets because they are already essential for women's health. We should be taking them on a daily basis. And I'm sure that Dr. Gerda or Ty would also add on to that and say the same thing as well.
Yeah, I think it's usually pretty harmless to be taking them. Only one to err on the side of caution is folic acid. I wouldn't advise taking folic acid until you're pregnant or trying to get pregnant. Apart from that, things like vitamin D, iron supplements, that's usually fine to take. And I know a lot of people tend to buy this pregnancy care supplement that it just comes with like a combination of lots of multivitamins. Like Ty said earlier, always look on the back to see how much it actually contains, because usually doctors or midwives would advise how much of a vitamin you should be taking. And for some people, it might be slightly higher or slightly lower than others. So just be a bit cautious with that. But yeah, I totally agree with what Juanita said.
Right, guys. Thank you so much. Can we have like in the comments like a nice little round of applause emoji? Like if you're watching on your phone, just give us a nice little round of applause emoji. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you, Juanita. Thank you, Dr. Golda. Thank you, Ty. Thank you all so much for being here today. I personally have learned loads. There's so much to this that I didn't know before, that it's going to help me now in especially in the way like the way I approach doctors, and making sure that when I am going to my appointments, I'm going prepared, and that I'm not just going and saying a big old story about all these things. I've learned about what vitamins I need to be taking, the kind of questions I need to be asking, and just being aware of my own body. And I think this is what this series is all about. You know, loving God, loving me. It's great being that prayer warrior. Great. There's nothing wrong with being the prayer warrior. There's nothing great with being a Bible head. But as well, your physical health is very important, because if all of us are called to do these great things in these on this earth as the kingdom of God, as kingdom people, we need to be in good health to do it. There is no point you being in bad health but having this great vision of ministry. How are you going to do it if your health is not great, if you're constantly in bed, if you're constantly not able to actually serve other people? Because that's what we're supposed to do with our gifts, to steward them to one another, to actually pour out to one another. So I'm so grateful to God that we have been able to actually do this and talk more. And guys, I hope you are excited for all our other episodes coming up. We're going to have one. We're going to be talking about our reproductive health. We're going to be talking about the issues with reproductive health. We're going to be talking about our dental health. We're going to be doing mental health. We're going to be looking at our health in general. I mean, I personally am doing this for women. I hope somebody will do it for men too, because men don't like going to the doctors. Like, we think that we're scared when the big words come out. They don't even go to even hear the big words. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's been such an amazing time to, you know, hear from you, to actually gain insight of the medical world. It is not as scary as we think it is. And I'm so grateful that we've been able to have conversation with you medical professionals, because how often do we get that chance to actually, like you said, we only have 10 minutes in our appointments. And so for you to be here with us for 2 hours and to give us a lot more insight than we know, we appreciate you greatly. So guys, thank you again so much for joining. To our viewers, and thank you for joining Loving God, Loving Me, and look out for the next episode. So God bless you all. Have a great evening and have a blessed week ahead. Take care.